Also, hi, Emma.
Hi.
All right, so I think that transitions pretty well into like the moral symmetry problem. I don't know, principal, I don't know if any of you guys remember this from the abortion meeting, but no. It kind of talks about the issue of like, I guess, kind of bystander effect to a certain extent.
Also, like killing versus letting die.
Yeah. So for those of you who missed it last time, the moral symmetry principle by Tooley is just that there's no morally relevant difference between intentionally refraining from causing a certain effect and like intentionally preventing the thing from happening, if that makes any sense. So like, and then this also assumes that the motivation is the same. So to give like an example,
So the drowning child.
I guess you can. I was gonna do the killing the cat, but
yeah. It's like, so there's this example. If you like see one child drowning in a swimming pool and you're like good at swimming, you're the only person around, and you don't go in and like rescue them, is that much different from just like throwing the child in the pool and letting them drown?
Or not even like throwing them, just like
pushing them.
Yeah. So what do you guys think?
I still think there's a difference because with one, like, you are causing the issue, and with the other, like, the issue has already happened. Like, why is it your responsibility to like have to deal with some kid who just like decided to go in the pool even though he can't swim? Like, why do you have to fix that?
I mean,
my gut.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say my gut reaction is that they're both equal because both of them are kind of like well, the one where you're watching the kid drown, like to me that's like an act of malice. If I was a third person watching that happen, I'd feel like that guy murdered the other guy because he was able to. And I guess this would be a simple example because all they'd have to do is walk in the pool and grab the kid, right? But I don't know, just watching that, I guess that's not really an answer.
No, I think I know what you mean. And I also just wanted to say, like, this doesn't really say anything about, like, what your responsibility is. This is just trying to say that, like, it's a morally equal thing to, like, refrain from helping the child and to just, like, be the one drowning him. And, like, that second little indent there is supposed to, like, control for, like, whatever you think might be the difference in both cases. Like, if you refrain from saving him with the same motivation as you do for like drowning him, and like it's like it requires like minimal effort to save him, then it almost seems to follow that there is no difference, but then a lot of people still do feel like there's a difference. So I guess I want to ask why.
It really makes no difference to the child that is drowning whether you kill them or let them be killed, because the end result is the same. But I guess if you're considering the people that are left standing outside of the pool, then there is a difference in how you are perceived and probably how that person perceives themselves, you know?
Yeah.
So there's after effects or consequences or like, I don't know, moral dissonance afterwards, but to the child, it's all the same. Sorry, kid.
It's always the question of like, well, I guess in this case, like it's not really a question of like what the consequences are versus the intentions, but that's also like a pretty big question.
Yeah, I also think that like if the person, the bystander, like 2 days earlier said, "Oh my God, I really hate this kid. I wish they would just like go away or get out of my life,"
and they just happened to be
they
drowning
happened
already.
to be drowning, and they were like, "Okay, wow, this took care of itself for me, versus them actually pushing the child into the pool. I think they're equally as bad.
So you do think there is moral symmetry?
In the drowning example, for some reason, I don't think it's always true.
So give me an example of a situation that it wouldn't be true in. I think maybe it makes you feel like it's less symmetrical when like you don't see the bad thing happening right in front of you. Like for instance, I think the example like one of my professors used one time was like, or maybe it was GSI. It was like you can either like purposely refrain from sending food to someone across the country, or you can like intercept the food that's like already on its way to those people. And that almost seems like not symmetrical at all to me, because it just seems like, I don't know.
It seems like you're putting in more effort to stop the benefit from happening as opposed to just not doing something, which is no effort to you.
I think maybe though that example just like proves moral symmetry again though, because then it just like, it just shows that what we care about is like the amount of effort they put into getting the consequence to happen. But if we say that the effort is comparable, then like I don't think there should be a problem.
So is there a difference towards putting in effort to create benefit versus putting in effort to, I don't know, take away benefit? Is that,
or maybe like harm? I think that would be well, right? Like doing something good versus not doing something, or no, stopping the bad thing from happening. I would say that's pretty symmetrical morally. But maybe just doing the good thing seems better. Is that the intuition?
So wait, under this principle, is it saying that something like murdering somebody would be the same as like not donating a kidney to someone who will die without it?
I feel like donating a kidney is like,
I don't think
too much effort. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it really emphasizes the small effort part. So like if saving their life just took like a press of a button, for example, like if you didn't do that, it would be like pretty much the same as just being the person who murdered them.
Okay, so how much effort is too much then?
I don't know, it has to be comparable to the amount of effort it would have taken to like do the action.
Wouldn't it be a lot of I understand what you're saying, but like what was the original situation that somebody pushes the person in and somebody saves the person?
Yeah,
or like
let's to
I
make
feel like those aren't equal though. Like pushing somebody is obviously like malicious, but like and then not saving somebody, I feel like saving somebody takes more effort.
Yeah, you're right. So like maybe change the analogy to just like be with buttons. So like you can either put someone in the water so that they will drown by pushing a button, or you can push the button to save them while they're like already drowning. That works, right?
No.
Wouldn't it be you push the button and they go in the water, or you don't push the button?
Or you don't push. Yes, okay. Yeah, because
Oh, wait, no. Wait.
requires like comparable amount of effort.
Wait, 2 different buttons maybe?
Wait,
So just going back to like the non-button example, is this principle saying that the amount of effort that, or like the minimal, right, the maximum amount of effort you have to spend to like not be a bad person and save someone depends on the amount of effort that it takes to do that bad thing?
No, I didn't mean to like insinuate that that's what it means. It's more like it's kind of hard because it's not exactly like bystander in that like you need to have like some kind of the same like motivation as to like why you're doing things, which is why like almost this principle almost like never applies in any like actual real world situation, because usually like doing something good requires like a lot of effort, and like preventing bad things from happening also requires a lot of effort as compared to just like not doing anything. But I think the point is like if we control for effort and motivation, then there should be no reason why there's a moral difference between refraining from bringing about the consequence and like just
Making a small effort to prevent it. Yeah.
yeah.
So this principle is about saying like failing to protect versus doing intentional hurting. But I think there still is, because I think there's even say there's you just press the button to protect, or pressing the button to kill versus not protecting and someone else is doing the killing is still very different, because I mean because you're from, I guess, like from a utilitarian and deontology, okay, I guess according to this principle they're the same, but if we're to take the perspective of the victim, they're going to see the person who's intentionally causing the harm, even in both situations where you're being harmed, is still problematic. It's going to be more problematic because you're bringing it about. I guess like aren't isn't this like basically just trying to apply the trolley problem? Like you're just like letting 5 people like die versus intentionally switching, or like what is it, like either let 5 people die or you have to like tip the one person over. But like in the situation where you're failing to press the button, you're because you don't have the responsibility, you're not going to be faulted for it. I think that's the point, is that attachment to responsibility is this moral symmetry. When you're the one who's like not doing something, that responsibility gets shared with everyone who's not doing it. But when you're the one intentionally bringing that harm, you're sharing responsibility with everyone who's doing intentional, or you're sharing responsibility with everyone who's bringing about that harm, which is probably most cases just yourself.
Right. So I think that's why in the drowning example, like you're supposed to be like the only one that could save them in that case. So like I guess I'm wondering like why, like do you think that like you don't have a responsibility to save them then? Like there is no obligation there? And like if so, like why do you think that?
I wouldn't say it's like, I mean, I would need to know the circumstances to bring you into that situation where you're the only one saving it. Because this is like when you're doing these thought experiments, this is where things get like, how did you get into that type of situation?
It just happened.
I have a question. I have a question, or
Go ahead.
because I'm getting kind of confused because the example was said like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Can I just, I'll restate what I think
Mhm.
we're talking about and we can agree. So like, let's say you're at a pool, and let's say you live in New Mexico and no one's there because it's a big open state, and it's just you and like a random kid,
Yes.
and you're reading your book and the kid is swimming, and then he starts to drown, and you know enough about drowning where you see the kid drowning, right? So then that's situation one. And then the other situation is you're at the pool, it's a kid and his friend, and then his friend holds him under the water and is drowning him. Or no, or is it you're the one murdering him? Like you and the kid, you're taking the kid and you're putting him under the water like that.
But then
So
in
those are the two.
the first part though, like you see him drowning and you're like, oh, I'm not going to help him because I want to see him drown and die.
Yeah. That's yeah.
So I think you did get it.
Okay.
I think if you want to see the person drown and you push them in, that's the same moral problem.
Yeah.
But like to relate it to like the donating money, like if you stop people like if you stop a donation of money to get food for people who are starving, whereas if you just don't donate, but if you intentionally don't donate because you don't want people to not get food, like I don't think I've ever donated like my own money for people to get food. I've donated for other reasons, but not that reason. So am I equally as bad as somebody taking away the food?
Who's to say? I think though, like what's missing from like your situation is like you're not doing it with the intention of like them not receiving the food, but then again, like if you are aware that there are hungry people, then that maybe gives you like a certain amount of responsibility towards them because you're informed about their situation. But like I don't know, it's especially tricky when you bring in the fact that like these people are like super far away and like you're not seeing this, you know?
I have a question about this principle. So, while we've been talking, I've been thinking of two different statements, and I want to see if like both of them apply or if only one of them is applicable here. So, in one, you have the statement hurting is the same as, well, no, not helping is the same as hurting. And then another statement would be not hurting is the same as helping. Would both of those be applicable here, or does this only apply to one?
I feel like those are really similar, and I feel like they both apply. And it goes with what I was just about to say about how there's a concept in philosophy and in human rights law, and it's positive versus negative obligations. And a negative obligation means you're obligated to not do something. So I'm obligated to not kill people. And a positive obligation means you're obligated to do something. So an example would be like, I'm obligated to prevent people from being killed. And I just feel like that's some like vocabulary that can help us like talk about this conversation. And like, for example, in human rights, like there's an asymmetry between like, it's a universal principle that countries should not torture, but it's contested as to whether countries have a positive obligation to prevent torture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everybody in general is like not good at admitting that they have positive obligations, which is why like this whole thing gets a little bit tricky because I feel like even myself, like when Emma brought up that example, I like can't think of an actual reason why there is no obligation there, but yeah.
I wanted to like bring this kind of not just talking about like obligations and the morality of it, but like framing it more in the light of like charity. The drowning child example is often used to like ask, regardless of the moral implications of like doing this versus not doing this, do you think that if you see one child drowning and you're the only bystander, you should probably save them? Yeah. What if there were 100 children drowning? Do you have an obligation to save all of them, to save at least one, to just like not do anything about it because it's too many?
You could like try to save a couple, I guess. but obviously it won't get to all of them. Like, I don't know.
As many as you can? Or a couple?
Wait, what?
You think you should
I
like,
can't hear you.
you think you should do your best to like save as many as you can?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. I don't know.
Anyone else have a different perspective?
Yeah, I think that it would kind of be maybe unfair because the kids that you don't get to, like, they kind of just got forgotten or like
So
ignored. But I don't know if that's better than just saving the ones that you can.
right. So
Yeah,
like,
to say equality.
I wouldn't say like forego saving any of them just because you can't save all of them. Like, is there a question of like who are you going to save? Sure, but in the moment, I'm assuming you're not like going through and picking and choosing like based on certain like characteristics or traits because that'd be awful. But if you can save, say, 1 out of 100, then why not? Well, not why not, but seems like the right thing to do, right? If you can.
right.
Yeah, I'm with Alexandra on this. I think a principle for this problem is the golden rule, as I've said, because if I was one of the 100 drowning kids, seeing someone rescuing other people, even if you didn't get to me, it would feel like they were doing the right thing because maybe they would get to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people that like are opposed to the concept of like charity and having an obligation to donate, sometimes they'll use like the slippery slope argument, like, well, if I have to donate to save one child, then I'll have to donate all my money and save all children. But I think that's like kind of a logical fallacy. And I know there are like philosophers who make arguments about this, and one of the biggest arguments is just like donate as much as it is appropriate in your life, like as much as you can afford to, and like it doesn't have to be all or nothing, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I think that also applies with like the 100 children thing. Like, you just put in as like much effort as like you see reasonable. It's just like, I guess, like, what should people actually be obligated to do? Because like, I think some people might even argue that you don't have an obligation to save like even one of those children.
You don't have obligations, but what is the right thing to do?
I feel like if somebody's gonna say like, oh, I don't have an obligation to like take care of other people in society, then other people kind of don't have an obligation to take care of them. Like if you want to exempt yourself from society and like live in the woods and like not have people care whether you live or die because you don't care whether people will die, sure. But you can't expect to be like saved when you don't care if other people get saved, I guess.
Yeah.
There's definitely a truth to that, but I don't think that's realistically applicable because there are a lot of people that do have that mindset. However, it's never actually reinforced. Does that make sense? Like, people are always going to help other people. And so, like, that mindset of, I don't have an obligation to anybody. And, I don't know, like having to accept then on the flip side that no one has an obligation to me, like having to accept that never really happens. But I'd be interested to see like what would happen if it did. Like
I
if
guess
you
like
had
what
to choose, you know?
what like obligations do you think like the normal person in society is receiving from others?
See, I guess a lot of us like aren't really in many situations where like we have like a need that needs to be fulfilled that's not being done by like ourselves or like our parents or whatever.
I mean, like medical emergencies.
Yeah, that's true.
Like what, EMTs? And
Yeah.
like, I guess like I would argue that you would pay for those in like taxes or with like health insurance or things like that. Like
And
no one's
also,
doing you a favor.
it doesn't work practically because, like, you know, doctors, well, under like the ethics that we've established, can't be like, oh, well, this person doesn't want to be treated, so we're just gonna not treat them, unless it's like a DNR. But like, you can't, like, if somebody gets hit by a car, like, what if they had like a life alert, like a bracelet, a medical bracelet on that was like basically saying that they couldn't treat them because they don't like want to, because they don't pay taxes, so they don't deserve
Yeah, like
those.
the room just like has to.
It wouldn't work, but like in theory is what I mean.
Yeah, and like you can receive those services even if you've never serviced anyone in any capacity.
There's another like angle to this that I'm also interested in. Let's suppose there was one child who was drowning still, versus like one situation you are the only bystander, and then in the next situation there is one drowning child, but there are like 100 bystanders, 100 like good at swimming people, and like in which situation do you think you are more likely to act to save the child?
I feel like most people would say you'd be more likely to act when it's just you and the kid. But then I've also like read things that say that that's kind of a problematic mindset almost, because if all 100 people had the same mindset of someone else is going to save the kid, then the kid would drown when there were 100 people there. So it's only safe to like think in that way if there's actually someone in the crowd of 100 people that's going to step up. And I don't know statistics, but there probably is. But I feel like it goes really well with like donating, like always assuming that there's someone else out there isn't, it's a little bit reckless. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this also applies to like climate change stuff. Like a lot of people are not willing to take like small actions to like help the environment because they're like, oh, I'm not personally responsible because like how much do I really contribute? But like if everybody thinks that way, then like obviously there's no way anything can get done, right?
See, this is a little unrelated, but I have a qualm about that with the straws, because like the straws aren't going to save anybody. And like I'll go off on people about that. That doesn't mean that like an individual's actions doesn't matter, but like I feel like the big companies kind of use the like personal change to kind of distract from the fact that there's much worse things that their company is doing. They're like, oh, look, try to not buy our water bottles only if you need to. But then, like, that's not even the real issue.
Yeah.
If we're doing the pool example, it's basically big companies are letting thousands of children drown in pools, but they are expecting you, singular person, to try to save that one child in the pool of 100. Like, you got to look at the bigger picture, but personally, there are children you can save. So,
yeah, exactly. And I think like a lot of people are really willing to accept that idea. Like not that it's false, but like a lot of people are really willing to accept the idea that it's like all the big companies' faults because then they're like they don't have to take any action, which is like problematic as we've already mentioned. So like what do you guys think about moral symmetry then? Like do most of us like disagree or do we agree or are we still like not sure?
I just don't think this principle is valid because it's making a, so like the thing is that the point, it's making some kind of like adjustments regarding like fault and responsibility, just because it's if it's your fault, it's always your. I think if most people agree, if it's your fault for doing something, it's also your responsibility to fix it. And sometimes if it's not your fault, then it is. Sometimes it's still your responsibility, even if it's not your fault. But sometimes it's not your fault and it's not your responsibility. And so like this, it's creating that premise of saying, if it's not your fault, it's still your responsibility. And that's not necessarily always the case.
So do you think it's like independent of someone's like intentions in the situation then, or?
Yeah, I think it's based on. I'm seeing like, it's yeah, I'm seeing that it's like, it is pretty what is it? It's pretty situation dependent. And that like creating intent and like creating like something or is different from stopping it from happening. Like I don't know, uh like for instance, like, you know, me like intentionally like hurting someone um is going to be, I think most people would agree with, I mean, I guess I'm playing to the crowd here, is worse than me wishing them really 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 hard that they get hurt and they get hurt. I think that most people agree that like going out and like, and even if it requires the same amount of effort, even requires the same amount of motivation, there's just a fundamental difference, because in when I'm like wishing harm, I'm still not responsible for it. But if I'm intentionally hurting, I'm creating responsibility.
Interesting.
I feel like that wish example doesn't quite apply because, I mean, I'll try and say this correctly the way that I thought it, but when you wish something and someone gets hurt, you don't have a chance to stop it. Like, even if you really, really hate someone, you made that decision not to go out and kill them, as you said, would take an equal amount of effort because you hated them just as much as you would in an alternate universe where you hatch some scheme to kill them.
Yeah.
Versus a meteor strikes their house and you really, really hated them. So I don't really think that's equivalent.
It's like comparing, like, if you know that there's a bomb in their house, like if there just is one, and like you could have warned them, but you purposely didn't because you want them dead.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
And I think in the pool example, because there's no other variables you have to think about, like the other stuff we talked about got a little gray because I haven't really thought about, should I donate all of my money to food shelters or something?
Yeah.
But in the basic pool example, I think this principle holds because the way I thought about it is if the kid was right in front of me in the pool and I didn't pick him up instinctually, and I'm sure if you surveyed millions of people and they saw me stand an inch away from a drowning kid and didn't pick him up, that I would be just as responsible as if I held him underwater. So then if you run that scenario again, but I'm like one step back, people will probably have the same opinion. So then take me 2 steps back, same opinion holds until, and then I guess that's where I couldn't see the kid anymore.
Yeah.
Where that disappears.
I think also a lot of the gray area is like, I don't know, a lot of the reason why people might disagree with this principle might just be like our like psychological reaction to this. So like even if someone says like holding a kid down and to drown them versus just like watching them is different, like sure you can say that, but like maybe you only think that because like it just feels more personal. Like if they have the same motivation in both scenarios, like I don't know, I just like I have the same intuition also, but like I can't really put a finger on like what would make the principle wrong anyway. So like I don't know if I like have enough to like reject it. So I guess I accept it.
It seems we're like weighing negative, like Alexis had said, negative obligation versus positive obligation. We're weighing them differently. Like you had said that Like the personally killing the child feels very different and feels more personal and feels more like weighty, I guess, on our own morality, because like the obligation to just not do something, to just not kill the child, like that doesn't require a whole lot of effort. So violating that seems like a bigger moral issue than not putting in that extra effort, that positive obligation.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, if I was the kid and someone was holding me down underwater, I would feel, I don't know, hate against them, whatever emotions I would feel towards them would be equal if there was a person standing 1 inch away from me watching me drown and they didn't do anything to start it.
Yeah.
It would be the same emotions, right? Maybe I guess they would be different because one would be like, why are you drowning me versus why are you letting me drown? But I feel like it's the same. And I'm saying it's the same still if the person's 1 inch away from me versus I see them on the edge of the beach watching me drown.
Yeah. I think I would agree with you. Like, I don't know. Tia, do you accept moral symmetry?
To a degree, like only when the harm is grievous, but when it's not like deadly. Then I don't realize.
I also think there's the question of like individualism versus collectivism, and the idea of like, even if it's not my fault, do I still have like some sort of responsibility to you? Like, do I still have some sort of like, do I still have something to owe you, whether or not I did something wrong to you? And I don't know, I just think about that kind of question as like, you are a human and I am a human, and what does that mean to you, if that makes sense? Like, what does it mean that we're both humans? Do we, knowing that we have that common experience, feel like just for that reason we're connected in some kind of way that might inspire obligation? That's just something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
So I think at that point you're looking for empathy, right? That would be that common experience, that feeling of connection.
Yeah, I think that's a good emotion to put on that. Yeah.
Well, just as a counterpoint there, I'm assuming that if we replace baby with like an animal, I think our answers wouldn't change. But like, I don't know. I guess like I don't think we feel empathy towards cats and dogs, but we wouldn't really change our answer with them though.
I think we still feel empathy towards cats and dogs. I feel like we feel empathy towards animals. Almost like you're a living thing, I'm a living thing. Um but yeah, there seems to be something unique though about like sharing in like being a part of the same species as another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I guess a big question is just like, what is reasonable to expect other people to do? Like, for other people, like, for example, like the reason why we brought this all up is because a lot of people have this idea that like if billionaires are not donating like a good portion of their money or like using their like power to like be good people, it kind of feels like morally wrong. So like what it would be like reasonable to expect from them, and does that mean like we should require them to do certain things, or what do you guys think?
I just always wonder like how much does it actually take to have a good life? Like how much material like stuff really Like, when does it just become the point of diminishing returns? And the only reason that the person doesn't realize that is just like delusion, if that makes sense. Like, I just feel like there's a point where having a certain amount of wealth isn't actually doing anything to improve like your experience outside of a very like superficial level.
Yeah.
But I'm not a billionaire, so I don't know. But then I'm also wondering, is there like some level of insanity to all billionaires? Like I don't know. Because that's a lot of power to have as one single human being. Yeah.
Real
Okay.
quick. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say real quick. I saw a TikTok like a few days ago that said after $70,000 of like a household income, happiness didn't like increase.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. But
There's a
No
Purdue
way, no
study
way.
that says that yeah, the Purdue study basically says that like $60,000 to $75,000 per year per household is like good for emotional well-being, and then ideal income is like 95,000, and then happiness starts declining actually after $105,000. So that was a 2018 Purdue study.
I think like I don't know, like a billion is a number that like we can't even like comprehend really.
Yeah.
Like for that matter, can we even comprehend 100,000 that
It's like,
well? Like
there was a video I watched. It was like a guy demonstrating like distance-wise, like the difference between 1 million and like 1 billion.
Yeah.
And he set like every meter or something to be like 100,000. To reach 1 million, he just like walked a bit around a parking lot, and then he got in his car and started like the counting for 1 billion, and then he was driving for a whole hour before like he reached 1 billion in distance.
yeah.
It's just like I don't know, someone as rich as like Jeff Bezos could just spend, I don't know, $1 million every second and probably like not run out for a good while.
Yeah. It's just
I also have seen that a lot of people think that they're closer to the 1% than they actually are, and like that they think that they're above the poverty line, but based on the actual definition, like they probably are under the poverty line.
I think also to put it into perspective, like I recently learned in one of my classes that the funding of the entire Human Genome Project was only $3 billion. So like if you can fund that kind of like science changing research with 3 billion, it kind of feels like really bad for like billionaires to not be like doing more things, I guess.
Yeah. Like we have the resources and the money to end world hunger and fix homelessness. But like, is it even right for us to expect billionaires to do
Exactly.
this when we can't even like just spend $10 for a good cause?
But I guess
I
you
mean,
can argue then that like we're not the same as them because
We're
like
not,
no
but-
matter how much money we put into something, it will never have the effect that they
But we're
could
saying if
have.
it's like proportional taxation, for example.
Yeah.
I was just about to mention that actually. Like, I think we need proportional taxation, in my opinion, because it always screws over the poor people, and then rich people get away with whatever,
Proportional, like
like
proportional
fining and shit.
calculated.
What? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Proportional or even like progressive, like a charity requirement or like a charity recommendation. Should you donate like 1% or 2% of your income, no matter how much you earn?
I mean, I don't see the problem with that, honestly.
But you wouldn't do it.
You want to, I guess, would probably think probably a better idea is probably like a wealth tax, because we actually do have a progressive tax system, at least on the federal level. The state level differs, but we do have a progressive tax system. Like if you're under, I mean, if you're under 12,000, then that's or actually no, it's like 24,000. You have the standard deduction, and if you donate, which most billionaires do, it's a tax write-off, right? So we actually have that system now. but I think we're focusing on the income level, which I think is the problem, is that like income versus capital is very different, because billionaires like Jeff Bezos, most likely, I don't even think he has an income. Most of his wealth just comes from stocks, which is capital. So if we tax the capital, I think that's probably going to have a much better effect than just taxing income, which is just what you get in a year, which can be zero.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question. So is the frame of this discussion only about what someone owes to like the destitute, or is it what we all owe everyone else?
Both.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh, because I was just gonna say that. I mean, to be fair, like Jeff Bezos, what he's employed has raised the standard of living for a lot of people. And I guess because you have to remember, he doesn't have his net worth in cash. It's all like chopped up portions of his company. It's like it's if you sold everything Amazon owned, every drone, warehouse, blah, 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 that's how much you would have. Yeah, sorry.
No need to be sorry. I think I just wanted to bring like something else up too about like the donations or whatever. A lot of people are like saying that like billionaire philanthropy is actually like problematic because like the amount of money they can put towards like certain causes is like an amount that is like really not that democratic if you think about it. Like for example, if somebody donates like hundreds of millions of dollars to like a political campaign, like pretty sketchy, if that makes any sense.
It's a tax write-off.
yeah, I feel like there's also I read a paper, it's like billionaire philanthropy, not only is it like bad for democracy in terms of institutions, but it's also like billionaires pretty much only do philanthropy so that they would have to pay less in taxes.
Yeah.
Because it's like much easier. And there's definitely like historical examples, like I don't know, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, all these like big billionaires of old just opening libraries, and or like Carnegie Hall, and just like when he just abused his workers and like did not even allow them to demand higher payments.
Yeah.
So like
it's just like a distraction from the fact that they're like not.
It's like they have the money, they want to spend it only in like the way they envision, but not in the way that is the most beneficial to people.
Yeah, it seems like a double-sided sword where like you get the check of like I have done my moral obligation, but also you could be steering society in a way that benefits you or caters to that person's specific ideals, and also you don't have to pay as much in taxes when you are the person with enough money to pay those taxes. So it's like I don't know, seems sketch, seems sus.
It's definitely like very complex. Like if we ignore billionaires for a second and just talk about people like us, I don't know, middle class, average, what kind of issues should we care about? If we were to donate 1% of our income, where should it go? Should I only focus on alleviating the problems in like Ann Arbor or something? Or should I just like, should I care about, I don't know, the famine in Yemen?
I feel like in a lot of ways, it just matters that you care about something, because I almost feel like with our access to so much news and media and information, it's easy to become apathetic a little bit because there's a sense of depersonalization when all of our knowledge of the world comes from a screen. And I feel like most people just need to be encouraged to like pick something to care about. because I don't know. Yeah, you don't have to care about everything. I think it's just enough to ask of one person to be like, hey, like if there's one thing that like pulls at your heartstrings a little bit, like give a little bit of your money. Because I feel like a lot of people aren't even doing like the bare minimum.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just really hard to like say what people should be doing because that also means that it should apply to us. And it's hard to like feel responsibility for stuff that's like super far away from us or that like we don't see on a day-to-day basis.
Also kind of hard to like the only way you can send money is to send it to like an organization that is specifically doing charity in that
Yeah.
specific part of the world. But I don't know. I feel like increasingly, for me at least, I'm becoming like a bit wary of them. Just because like I see all these YouTube ads all the time and it's like some dog in the street just like suffering and they're just like taking a video of it instead of actually helping it when that ad probably costs like much more than it would have taken to just take care of the dog. So like I don't know. It's like awareness also comes with possible like I don't know, like generating negative feelings in your audience.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, I don't know, it's really hard to like see that like the systems we have in place to like help people are not like really that well done in the first place. So it's kind of hard to like feel like that is the way to go. But then like what else are you gonna do?
Exactly.
I think there's something to be said for how difficult it can be also to like understand like the problems that are in the world, and it's so like no one wants to like awaken to how many things can cause pain and like sadness because it affects them, because we're all like sympathetic to suffering in some capacity. But I also think that that's just like part of being human, and I almost think it's better to like feel those kinds of feelings than to like and whatever that word is, to numb yourself from it. Because I just think that's part of what it means to be a human, honestly, is to like feel things. And if part of feeling things makes you feel like you should do something about it, I mean, I guess you're helping the world. So
I think a lot of like a lot of people have started talking about like how they just feel like they're overwhelmed with the number of like causes there are right now because there's obviously so much wrong with the world right now, and then that just eventually makes them feel hopeless and then in turn doesn't produce any good results. So like should we then like ignore the news to a certain point or like I don't know. Like what is the balance between like being informed and like doing your part versus just like trying not to get too overwhelmed with everything?
That's definitely a personal line that everyone needs to determine for themselves, because I feel like there are some people that like can handle a lot and there are some people that do get easily overwhelmed. So just doing the extent to which not necessarily you are comfortable. Well, I mean, comfortable slash able. That's like there's a gray area in there that like people can find in which you are functional and willing to give a certain amount of attention and time out of your day, just to be aware and be informed in order to be a good global citizen, you know?
Yeah. It's just so tricky because like just us like saying what people should do is not going to change anything anyway. Like I don't know. The only way to like get people to actually do things and it doesn't even work all the time is by law and like that just seems like unreasonable for certain things like this, because like I guess you might say that this is not the type of moral situation that you can like force on people, I guess. But like, I don't know, how are you supposed to solve problems then?
I think also like besides law itself is like forcing people, or at least getting them into situations where they are like where they're forced to sit with themselves and actually engage in these kinds of questions and actually come to their own conclusions about what they believe, like just like raising that self-awareness in people is another way to just like change the mindset of people that are like apathetic to like a point that is just like unhelpful. But then I don't know, like I don't know what the level, I don't know how we can tell people like how sympathetic they need to be, because it just goes back to the question of like what do we owe each other, like what do we really owe each other. And it seems like there's not really a good answer, or there's not one answer. There might be a lot of good answers, but there's not one answer.
Yeah, definitely. It's just really tricky, because like to an extent you can kind of say that we like really don't owe anybody anything. Like the only reason we maybe have obligations towards other people is because of like the social contract and like whatever consequences you might face if you don't do your obligations, at least legally. So I don't know. And like especially if you don't believe in some like higher power, it doesn't really seem like there's anything keeping you from just like being completely idle. Besides maybe your guilt, I guess.
I almost feel like even without a higher power, there can be a sense of like almost like spirituality in just like understanding that we all share this planet, and like that's a real thing, and that we all have such similar experiences to each other. I feel like that's one way where you don't really have to answer to anyone, like any higher power. You just kind of have to answer to yourself about like just getting real with yourself and like asking yourself like how do I feel about like the person sitting next to me on the bus? Like, yeah, they're a stranger, but they're a stranger that has like that just shares the world with me, that we both have happiness, we both have anger, and we both have pain. So what does that mean to me?
I think the sense of obligation that comes from that is definitely rooted in human emotion and the human sense of community. And that itself is a social structure, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, like humans are always trying to make structure in some way to aid ourselves, to create community, to create just any kind of organization that we can, right? And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I mean, it works. It got us here, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it, especially because it's like it seems like an almost evolutionary response. We're like trained to care for the community we feel like we belong to, but as we progress, the wider that community becomes, because we become like aware of people on the other side of the world, and like that can cause some confusion. Like you don't know which part of your community you should care about. But it's definitely interesting to see, because just as this obligation is like weighing more heavily on us because there are much more people, it's also much easier to get resources to the places that need them the most.
Yeah, that's true.
Is there another slide after this one?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Why does it have to make that sound? Oh, I guess we're at 8:20 now. Wait, does anyone have anything to add?
Any last thoughts?
Did you guys read the book Peter Singer? I kind of figured someone would probably bring it up, but I guess no one did.
Oh, I've never read the book, but I've read parts of it before.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
I think like what it does well is that it responds to a lot of the arguments that about not donating, like
Yep.
there's it's just very overwhelming, the slippery slope argument. And I believe he also made like his own foundation that like I believe he's like an economist, so like he made a foundation that, like optimizes every dollar to create the most help.
Yeah, I think one of the claims I read from him is like if you're able to get your needs met and get a reasonable amount of like leisure money and like all of that, then like the rest of your money that's not actually necessary for that, you should donate. Like if you don't need Starbucks every single day is basically what he's saying. You can have it once a week. Like I think that's one of his points.
I'm really glad you guys like caught that because that's where I got the drowning child example. Yeah, Peter Singer is definitely very influential in anything related to charity, honestly. All right, so for our announcements.
Yeah, so our next meeting is about like the philosophy of identity, so it will be way more abstract than today's meeting was. I feel like this was like very grounded in like actual politics and like what we do like on a day-to-day basis. After that one, we'll do our meritocracy and forms of government one. What were we thinking about talking about in that? Is there? Oh, I know. Wait. So like whether meritocracy is like actually the way we should go. Like I feel like a lot of people are inclined to believe that meritocracy would be a good idea. And like just whether or not if there is a like ideal form of government and so on. And then on the 17th of February, we'll have our Netflix party. We're going to be watching a Black Mirror episode. And then the following week, I think, is like a wellness break or whatever. So I don't think we'll have a meeting on that day. But then the following meeting, we can discuss San Junipero and like uploading consciousness, which is like probably going to be my favorite meeting of the semester. So definitely show up for that one. And I also recently made our like Google Calendar thing. So if you guys want to get like little notifications like 10 minutes before our meeting starts, then you can go on our website. I also sent it out in today's like email. And then I just put in the chat our link to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention page. Like they're doing a virtual walk this year because of coronavirus. But like if you guys want to donate and if you go to U of M, you should join our team because there's like no one in our team right now. And lastly, if you guys are like super interested in a particular topic and like want to like lead the discussion, then you can email me and we can figure something out. But other than that, that is the end.
Thank you everyone for showing up today. This was a really good discussion.
Yeah, you guys are great.
And you guys had really good insights. See you next week, hopefully.
Everyone's so quiet. Hey. Wait, you're still muted, Mama. Don't do that.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I was skiing all day.